Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Aguilar, President of the Society of Professional Journalists. This is Women in Power, and I am so excited. I'm a little bit nervous. It's kind of weird because I admire all these women who are joining us tonight. It's like history. So we are 6 women of color who are running, our presidents, and one is a VP of the largest journalism organizations in the country. In 2022, we should all be excited, everybody. So let me do some quick introductions, okay? First of all, Dorothy Tucker, who's the president of the National Association of Black Journalists. Well, she had an emergency assignment tonight, journalism calls. But joining us to represent NABJ is another woman in power, Kathy Chaney, NABJ's Vice President of Print. I'm going to introduce each person. They're going to give us our 30-second intro about their lives, and then we're going to get right into the conversation. For all of you, if you have questions, please put them in the chat or in the, I believe, the place where you can put your questions. By the way, Nicole Sartain up there in the corner that you see, she is the president of SPJ Georgia, but she's helping us. And this event happens every year with diverse leaders because of the SPJ New England chapter. A big thank you to Adam Senek. So let me start with you, Kathy. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Kathy Chaney, I'm based in Chicago. I am the National Vice President of Print for NABJ, and I'm also an NAHJ member. Let me say that while we have Nora on the line here. And I am the executive editor for YR Media. It's an Oakland-based youth media nonprofit newsroom.
Thank you, thank you. Next, Nora Lopez.
Hi, thanks, Rebecca. I'm Nora Lopez. I'm the president of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, about to finish my 2-year term. Looking forward to Vegas. I'm executive editor at the San Antonio Express News. I grew up on the Texas-Mexico border, and despite the controversy that's been going on all day on Taco Bowl, I do love my breakfast tacos. Nothing against them.
Thank you so much. Francine Compton.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Francine Compton. I'm the president of NAJA, the Native American Journalists Association. And I too am coming up to the end of 2 terms as president. I've been with the organization since early 2019. I joined in early 2019, and it's been a life-changing experience for me. Although I've been in the business for over 20 years, I've learned so much in the last just 3 years with NAJA, and it's an honor to be here tonight with everyone. My day job is assignment producer for CBC Indigenous, our mainstream broadcaster here in Canada. It's a public broadcaster. It has an Indigenous news unit, and so I'm the producer of that special unit.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us. Marie De Jesus.
Hello all, good evening. I am Marie De Jesus. I am president of the National Press Photographers Association. I am also a staff photographer at the Houston Chronicle, so I am based in Houston, Texas. I am from Puerto Rico. I am born and raised in the island. I have been here in the continental US side for about 19 years and about 9 years at the Chronicle. So it's an honor to be included in this. Thank you.
And you broke a barrier. Tell them about that.
So I am the first Latina president of NPPA. NPPA has been, it's an institution in the visual storytelling world, 75 years and going. So it has been quite an honor, and I have been received in ways that I just never imagined that I would be embraced and welcomed.
Beautiful. Congratulations on that. Michelle Yehi Lee.
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Michelle Yehi Lee. I'm the president of the Asian American Journalists Association. I also am coming up on the last year of my 2nd term. So after 4 years, this will be my last. And I joined AAJA when I was 18 as a college freshman. I was born in Korea, raised in Guam. So another territorial native here. And I moved to the continental US for college, and I didn't know how to find my crew as I tried to become a journalist. So I came across AAJA and have been a member since. In my day job, I'm the Tokyo Seoul Bureau Chief for the Washington Post, normally based in Tokyo. I'm currently in Seoul. So I'm in a hotel room. So this is my best backdrop, really. I cover Japan, North Korea, and South Korea. And I've been at the Washington Post for almost 8 years. Before that, I worked at the Arizona Republic. It's a real honor to be here. I'm also a member of NABJ and NAHJ ally member, and anyone can also join AAJA as an ally. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. And just in case you don't know about my background, I am the SPJ president. I will also end my term in October. Claire Regan, who's joining us here with this conversation, she'll be the next president in October. And I also broke a barrier. You know, I became the first woman and of color and Latina in 113 years to be the president of this organization. And I am so grateful. Yeah, it is so grateful to our members, because we are a predominantly white organization and they believe in diversity and inclusion. And well, I'm perfect proof of it. So let's start the conversation. First of all, to anyone who wants to take this first, did you ever set out and think, I want to be president of the organization or vice president? Did you think about that? Did someone bring you in the fold? How did it happen? How did it happen? Let me go with you, Michelle, first.
Well, because I gained so much from AAJA as a student member and a young member, I always wanted to give back the moment I could, the moment I felt like my career was stable enough. So when I started working full time, I started volunteering with AAJA, and I started with raising money by selling my old clothes at a garage sale so other students can go to convention, and running for my chapter board in Phoenix. And that was about it in terms of what I thought I would be doing with AAJA, just volunteering at the local level. And one of the national officers encouraged me to run for national office, and I couldn't see myself in it. And I was like, I don't know how to do it. And I don't think I'm fit for this, but I was mentored and encouraged to do it, and really being shown my potential on the national leadership board was what really mattered to me. And so as president now, I try to do as much of that as possible, building up the next leaders. And even if people don't feel exactly ready, I tell them, I think you will be really, really great for this job the moment you're ready for it. So it wasn't until someone saw the potential in me that I saw the potential in myself for this job.
That's the beauty of good leaders like you. You're always looking to grow the next leaders. That's beautiful. Marie, what about you?
No, I had never that type of level of ambition. I connect very much with what Michelle was saying. I found myself a Puerto Rican young woman with a, clunky English 17 years ago. And, I'm a member of NAHJ, I'm a member of SPJ, I'm a member of everything, right? And so through NAHJ and NPPA, I started finding my place. And I realized that in photo back then used to be a pretty male dominated world. And I just felt that I truly needed then to be what I needed back then, right? Like put myself in a situation in which, so it was not the plan. I was the secretary for about 3 years at NPPA. I knew the bylaws very well. I knew the PNPs very well. So at the moment of, okay, who's going to take the presidency? A past president said, I don't think it should be no one else but Marie De Jesus. And that happened in January. So it has been about 6 and 7 months. It takes a moment to, find your place, but it's been great.
So it was someone else that encouraged you. Beautiful on that story.
Oh, yeah.
Nora, what about you?
I was Rebecca. I like everybody else, I had not thought about running for NAHJ president. I last served on this board 20 years ago, and I thought that was it for me. But a couple of years ago, there was some controversy with our group. Elections were postponed. And there was a whole faction of members who thought that was wrong. I was among those who thought that was wrong. and we petitioned for the elections to be held. And as part of that, it was like, okay, well, you know, if we're going to petition for them to be held, we have to have a candidate. And I was sort of recruited a little bit and encouraged. And I said, okay, I'll go for it and I'll do it. And it was much to my surprise that my whole candidacy was called an insurgency, but I didn't see it that way. I thought, you know, I'm just trying to make sure that NAHJ stays on the right footing and that we steer the course. But in one weird little foreshadowing, the last time I was in Las Vegas was what, 10 years ago, going on 11 years, when we had the last NABJ, NAHJ unity meeting in Las Vegas. And that very last night, the president of the organization at the time, Michelle Saucedo, was leaving early, and she and I are colleagues, and we've known each other for a very long time when we both worked at the San Antonio Light. And she was leaving early, and she said, "Do you want my room?" She had the presidential suite. She goes, "You can have it for the night here." And she gave it to me. So I stayed in the presidential suite that last night, and here I am 10 years later, legally having the presidential suite. So I don't know if that was foreshadowing or what, but it was kind of curious. I thought about it the other day.
Well, we know where we will be next month in your presidential suite, in the Tejano party, by the way. All right, Francine, what about you?
Absolutely did not ever expect to be president of NAJA. And I do have to thank the previous president for, first of all, recruiting me and welcoming me into the organization, you know, as somebody who works on another side of a border. I think what we really did with that was really handing over the torch and also really looking toward the future and how we could lay the groundwork for what we want to do. And part of what we've been talking about doing and working towards is expanding ourselves and essentially bringing ourselves back to our roots, so to speak, because this organization was founded by journalists on both sides of the border. And there are many nations who, you know, they don't recognize the border because the nation's traditional territories overlap the border of Canada and the US. So there was a lot of heart into, you know, us wanting to expand, get back to our roots, and also represent Indigenous journalists on this side of the border more so, as there is no counterpart here for Indigenous journalists. So our organization is really going to be there for everyone in Canada too. And so I think it was something that was sort of meant to be, you know, that torch would be passed to me. And it's been a really amazing 2 years. I called myself the pandemic president because that's what, you know, a lot of navigating during the pandemic has been a big part of it.
Interesting, pandemic president. We'll be tweeting about that for sure. Kathy, what about you? I know you're a vice president. Are you looking at the presidency, or did someone twist your arm to become vice president?
Twist arm is more like it. So I will round out what everyone is saying, that, you know, I had no idea that this is something that I wanted to do, you know, higher up in the organization. I've been a member of NABJ since college, and I've been extremely active on my local level. I was served as the local president for 2 terms, and I was just heavily involved in task forces and committees nationally on NABJ. So probably about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, people started saying you should go for the board, the national board. And I was just like, no, you know, I do feel that I'm effective, or just as effective, you know, serving, you know, the members, committees, task forces, and things like that. But like maybe 2-3 years ago, then that's when a few people started trying to twist my arm, and I was like, okay, I'll serve. So it's been an interesting ride. We love and hate our organizations at the same time because so much work that's involved. But you know, it was a great decision, and I'm having a ball, even though it's convention time right now, which could kind of get you kind of ragged. So.
Oh, Yeah, we're all on convention mode, no doubt. I will tell you my experience. My experience is I grew up with NAHJ. Been a member since the mid 80s. I was on their board for 6 years, but it was at an SPJ convention that, because SPJ and NAHJ, we merged them in 2012, that a president, Alex Triquenio, came to me, I mean, made a beeline towards me and said, I need you to change my diversity committee. And I was like, okay, you know. And then she said, I need you to run for the board. And I was like, okay, you know, I don't know, you know, the board of SPJ. I thought, honestly, in the beginning, I was like, okay, I'll run. And I didn't really think I was going to win, to be honest with you, because I thought really nobody knew me. But the main thing she said to me, you guys, this is, I mean, in a white female, by the way, she looks at me, she's like, I go, well, what's the issue? She's like, we need diversity. Our board is, you know, like 90%, 95% white. We need diversity. We need voices. We need people to change it. And I could see her passion. And I thought, I got to do this. And so did I ever think I was going to be president? No, because believe me, I've had my obstacles with this organization. But again, this is a great organization. And so, you know, one of the questions that I want to ask all of you is, I always hear about the imposter syndrome, that these, especially people of color, women, we talk ourselves out of these positions. I can't do that. You know, you got to twist my arm or whatever. Did you ever feel it? I mean, I'll be honest, before I took my oath, and even though I strategically was thinking of becoming president once I became secretary treasurer, there was a part of me, and very few people know that, I thought, okay, can I really do this? I remember telling my best friend, Eleanor Vega, I mean, this is big stuff. And she's like, you can do it, you can do it. Did you ever feel it? Let me start with you, Marie. Did you ever feel that imposter syndrome?
Absolutely. Oh, this was definitely not
And
part
how did
of
you get over it, by the way? How did you get over it?
You know, when I start seeing people's reaction to the help I provide, when I see their, you know, or they are aliviados, or they are motivated, or they're energized, or I'm like, oh my, I might, you know, this is something that I actually can do. But it's, I think, a daily battle thing, right? And it's not just with myself, right? Even when I am filling or finding for people for panels, I always hit that wall, is women, professional women, who turn me down for panels.
And why?
They say they don't feel they're experts enough on that matter. It's always women that are second guessing. If I offer the position in the panel to a male colleague, immediately.
Interesting. Michelle, what do we do in that situation? I mean, I don't know if you've ever had the imposter syndrome. If you did, how did you get over it? And what do you tell women like the ones Marie has described? Or women of color especially?
I come across that all the time, especially as a reporter asking experts for comment. I'll reach out to them, and, you know, I'm always trying to diversify the sources I'm quoting. So I'll reach out to women and they'll say, you know what, I'm not 100% expert in this. Let me recommend you 3 people that I think are better than me. And then I talk to a man whose research like barely fits in, and he'd be like, here are my thoughts. Feel free to quote me, you know. And it's like, it's just very different in the way that I think it is a very gender thing, because I've come across it across so many different, like, you know, racial backgrounds and nationalities. And, you know, I mean, I, of course, also being one of the youngest people to take on the job at AAJA, luckily the president right before me was my exact age, so she kind of broke the barrier on being the youngest. But there's also some of that too within our organization, because you know, like the mentors who helped you grow in the organization kind of still see you as the person you were when you were 18 or 19. So to rise to a level of authority, they kind of see you as, well, you know, well, but I helped you get there. So why are you trying to lead this organization that I helped you get into? So there was a bit of that as well. And, you know, I think to me, whenever I came across that sort of imposter syndrome, which I still do, I just have to look at my own self and what I've accomplished and realize that I rightfully got to where I am because I did the thing. You know, when I ran for president, I listed out all the things I had done at AAJA, which was I was a part of like every single program. I had served at every single level. I served as secretary, VP, and then I was running for president. And I tried to look at my resume objectively and wonder, is this someone I would find right for the job? And I had to convince myself that I am. And then once I was able to, I think I was able to talk myself into it. But yeah, I think it's just sometimes we just need to pep talk ourselves as if we would pep talk our best friend, you know?
I love that. I love that. And I think to anybody who wants to be a leader out there, because I know a lot of elections are going on, do what Michelle said. I myself put a list on a wall with a paper and just say, here's what I've done this month and this month, just to remind myself that I am on track, that I am doing something good. Because every once in a while, you know, some member will come and complain and you feel like, okay, they just sucked the wind out of me, but that kind of thing. Francine, what do you say to, you know, especially women of color, women out there who constantly have that imposter syndrome? If you ever had it, how did you get over it? How did you move forward?
Yeah, I never had it. And I quite honestly didn't know what it was until about a year ago. And I was asked about it and I really didn't know how to answer. I thought they were asking me about indigeneity, you know, and imposters among indigeneity and indigenous communities. So I never had it, and maybe that's what helped me throughout my career. You know, I have climbed the ladder and I've climbed every step of it. I didn't miss any steps, and I made sure to learn every part of the job, every ingredient that goes into making the 6 o'clock newscast. I learned it and I did it, and I started very young. At the age of 21, I was directing national news, live newscasts, and town halls with live audiences and callers live across Canada. And so my problem was never imposter syndrome. You know, I was actually always very shy. And so I think what I was given was, you know, guidance from my dad, who was a journalist and a TV reporter growing up. And the guidance was always like, you know, you can do anything.
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to tell all the reporters that I work with, you know, you can do anything. I started from a place where I was, you know, 19 years old, running around a newsroom telling producers I could do stories, and they would just look at me and turn around, and I would say, hey, camera, let's go, and you know, edit them myself, write them myself, and just prove that I could do it to myself and to others.
So let me jump in real quick, but and I understand the journalism part, but what about in your leadership part? When you look at it, and here's an interesting part thing I wanted to say. When someone mentioned to me imposter syndrome, I too was like, what does that mean? I mean, I know that sometimes I've had my doubts, you know, does everybody know? No. You know, do I label it imposter syndrome? Well, I didn't probably label it that, but you know, I do have my doubts, but every once in a while. So Francine, I mean, so you applied all that I can do attitude to the leadership position that you hold now.
Yeah, and I had mentorships throughout my career. I had people supporting me. My previous mentor was the woman news director at APTN, who's, you know, been honored and awarded. And so I've had that type of a really wraparound career experience where, you know, at each stage, I was able to be mentored into all of these positions. So I encourage mentorships, and I encourage, you know, that type of attitude, but at the same time, I encourage everyone to put in the work when it comes to fostering a young journalist and giving them the opportunity to try it and give it their best. You know, and another thing that helped, something my dad did and something I did too, was actually take some acting lessons and go to drama school. And so there's a lot of things depending on which area of the industry someone's trying to go in. I really when I learned what that meant, I really had to shoot it down. And, you know, if that were something that was trying to, you know, touch or affect any of the journalists I work with, I would try to really just bat that away from them, because that's not healthy.
Yeah, very interesting. I will say that my television background has helped me, especially when I have to do presentations, when I have to do Zooms, when I have to, you know, just speak off the cuff. Definitely as a leader, it does, my television background helps. Let me change it up a little bit, especially with you, Kathy and Nora. There are people who want to run for office right now, whether they're your organizations or the other organizations. What is important, especially because, you know, there, you know, some, of course, NAJ, NAHJ, NABJ, the other organizations, you have no problem with diversity, like maybe NPPA and SPJ. But to you, I ask you, you know, how do you start that path to become the leader? I mean, is it important to find mentors right now? Is it important to look at the time? Because I see a lot of people get on boards and they really don't do anything. They're just warming up a seat. Kathy, what about you? What do you say to that?
I think that you should start with your local chapter first. I think that you really gain a lot of insight on how running a board or being part of a board is, especially within the larger organization. So I think really starting locally and then also getting involved nationally on some task forces, on some committees, on some special projects, so you can get to see some of the inner workings of the organization and get to know other members that aren't local. I think it really does start there local, because like you say, there are some people who just say, okay, I want to go for the board, and they've had no chapter experience, and then they get there and they are just warming a seat, and that's completely ineffective for a board and for the membership at large. So I really do think that, you know, just I think on the local level, which when I was president of the Chicago chapter for 4 years, I think each of us bringing 1 or 2 people to our board meetings to kind of have them shadow and helping and learning, because eventually we all gonna have to get off the board or retire or something. So you want to massage that next, you know, round of leadership, and you want to lift as you climb. So I think that those things are important, you know, to grooming future leaders of a national organization or chapter.
Yeah, good advice. Nora, what about you?
Well, first of all, I had such a great answer for the other question, but
Go ahead, answer it.
no, I'm kidding.
No.
I was going to say that I did not feel that imposter syndrome, in large part because I think I had already felt it when I was climbing the ladder within my organization. So I think I had already squelched that part of it. For me, it was not about do I have the ability, but do I have the time, which I think will bring me segue into, if you are thinking about running for one of these boards, I really encourage you to examine the time and to do it for the right reasons, because you really want to get involved and you really want to serve the organization and the broader cause of what our organizations do, and not because you're just looking for something to pad your resume. Because we need people who are passionate about what our organizations do, who are committed to our missions. And so we want people who are really involved. And that's why it is important that you start at the local level and that you really get your hands dirty at the local level and, you know, learn the ropes of how we go about doing this. I was president of the DFW Network of Hispanic Communicators. And I was president of our local San Antonio Association of Hispanic Journalists, which I'm so proud of, because we've got our scholarship gala coming up in 2 weekends, and we're giving away $40,000 in scholarships, which is just amazing to me, because when our groups first started, I remember, you know, the big prize was we had a writing contest and we gave students a Mac computer. I mean, so like, look at how much we've accomplished and how far we've gotten in trying to help students have the means to go to college and to get more journalists of color into our newsrooms.
You're also part of the SPJ San Antonio chapter, right?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. I'm also very active with the San Antonio Professional Journalist, San Antonio Pro chapter, and it's one of my loves. And Francine mentioned acting, and one of my favorite things to do with SPJ is our fundraiser. the Gridiron Show. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I look forward to it all the time.
I know you guys raised some major bucks with that. Yeah, and I think, I'll tell you, when I became Secretary Treasurer and I knew that, and I ran for President-elect, which the title will change to Vice President next year or coming up soon. I knew that I wanted the board to be very diverse. I started strategizing. I knew basically who I wanted around me. And today our board, which is nine people, 6 of them are people of color. 1 is a trans woman. 5 of them are NAHJ members. 1 of them is an NABJ member. And so I knew that they could lead. I knew that they didn't need it for their resume. I knew that, you know, and I told them, you're going to be representing people of color. And if we don't do the job, then we'll be criticized. Because you guys know, we get criticized if we don't do the job right. And I am so fortunate to have such a great board. And again, you know, the next president, she's remarkable. And so it's in good hands. So I have the same advice as Nora and everybody else. You have to have time. Don't do it for your resume. And by the way, if you promise something, you better come through. Because I see people that are running for re-election and they have all these promises and I keep going, well, I'm sorry, what did you do for the past 2 years? And they don't have an answer. And when they don't have an answer, that's a problem. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit because we have another, I mean, this has gone fast. I want to talk about diversity and inclusion in the newsroom and the classroom. To all of you, you know, after George Floyd's death, murder, it just seemed that every company, every media company, every organization, we want to bring in diversity officers. We want more diversity training. Everything was diversity, right? And so things seem to kind of mellow out now. So when you look at the grand scheme of things, newsrooms, are managers doing enough yet? Let me start with you, Kathy. When you look at it, you know, are they doing enough? Are you seeing that they're coming to NABJ and saying, hey, we need help in this area? Tell me about that whole landscape. What do you think?
I think some of them are doing what they have been doing. So I think it's like a case-by-case basis. There are some newsrooms who have started that work before George Floyd's murder. I do know that there are a few newsrooms who did it, and one of the former papers that I worked for, it seemed like the trendy thing to do. And those type of situations just really bother me. But I know that the people that they've put in place, whether they felt that, oh, this was the gimmicky thing to do or whatever, you put me in place here, I'm not going to be a figurehead like you probably want me to be. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to actually do this job. I'm going to do the Lord's work and try to bring about change as best as they can within their power. And I have seen things like that happen. You've got the Baltimore Sun who, you know, did the apology. That's after, you know, George Floyd. Kansas City Star, you've got the Philadelphia Inquirer. So you've got plenty of papers who have been doing the work. The Boston Globe, you have Greg Lee there. So there are many newspapers who are, you know, putting the money where their mouth is. They are doing the action instead of saying, you know, oh, we really care about diversity and, you know, we're really going to make this change. And you keep hearing that every year. However, you don't see a change. And I'm a person who, let me see some action. I don't want you to tell me that you're going to do this. Let me see you do this. So I have seen some newsrooms actually do the work once they've created these positions. And that's all I can ask for.
Yeah. Michelle, one of the things that I noticed is when suddenly there was the Asian hate, right? Asians and Asian Americans being attacked here and there. I suddenly saw newsrooms that were making an effort to not only report on the issue, but it appeared to me that they really were paying attention to it. But what happens always in news, it's hot today and tomorrow they move on to something else. Again, in that area, do you feel that newsrooms are being more inclusive, more diverse? And especially with the, you know, Asian American voice, is it going to, you know, are you included? Is that community included?
Well, so, you know, big picture, I would say I've been on the board for almost 10 years now at AAJA, and I do see a lot of companies taking more action to support and want to recruit more proactively from AAJA. So I think that is a good sign. You know, I think like all of us, I'm I just want to make sure that diversity from these companies' perspective is not a fad, that it's not a temporary interest because it's the hot thing. And I keep trying to tell these companies that diversity is not a sidetrack to journalism. It is a part of your journalism because it makes your journalism stronger to have diverse people, diverse perspectives and coverage from all angles. And in the aftermath of George Floyd's killing, there was, all the protests and companies really stepping up and wanting to say something, do something. And a lot of our members at the companies who were also wanting to do something felt excluded, and they didn't know how to be a part of these conversations. The Black journalists, Hispanic journalists were immediately called in for diversity initiatives. Asians were not always. And we didn't, members came to me and said, look, we're not the ones with the knee on our necks. And we should recognize that, but we should also have a seat at the table. And it's not to take away from anybody's experience, but we also deserve a seat at the diversity conversation. So how do we assert ourselves without making it seem like our struggle is the same as that each of our struggles are exactly the same, because they're not. And that was a very difficult conversation for us, but we still had to push for a seat at the table and say, look, diversity also includes Asians, and we need to talk about this. And then when the pandemic happened and all, Asians were being shoved to the ground, stabbed in the face, then people started realizing, oh, Asians face racism too. And then we had to remind people racism was a part of our origin story in this country in the 1880s with the Chinese Exclusion Act. When Chinese people started coming over to be migrant workers, they were excluded by law. And then the Japanese internment camps during the war, Japanese Americans were interned or incarcerated because they faced racism. So we had to keep reminding people anti-Asian racism and harassment is also not a fad. It's a hot thing right now. And to cover it, I think we've had to convince companies that this is newsworthy because it is a part of our history. And it has been difficult because at first it was hard to convince companies that this was news, that it wasn't just one-off things happening in different parts of the country. It's actually a bigger trend that many, many people were experiencing. And then when it started happening so much, producers and editors would ask our members like, well, but what's the new angle to this violence? What's new about it now? It happened yesterday, it happened a couple months ago. How do we, it's just not newsworthy enough. And our members really struggle to show, look, racism doesn't need a news hook. It doesn't need a news peg. It needs editors and producers and news managers who truly care and want to empower their journalists to find deep dives and lasting angles to these stories. So for us at AAJA, we have been working on many different aspects of just trying to push for lasting changes within organizations. And I do think there's more appetite for it now, but I always don't feel like it's enough.
And I think, and very well said, Michelle, because you're right. I mean, every time there's a certain case, it's only the Latinos with the kids in the cages, but you know what, you wonder how many other people who are immigrants or migrants are in those cages, right? It could be any other people from other countries. So you're right, we should always remember that we have to look around the table and go, okay, maybe it wasn't someone who died under that knee who was Asian, but we have the conversations there. We have to all talk about it. But, Francine, one of the things that, especially in the Native American community, the missing people, the missing women, the Native Americans who, Indigenous women who've been missing, an ignored story, that is a perfect example of, is it getting the attention it needs? And again, going back to, having those diverse voices in the newsroom, I guess it's key to have someone in the newsroom who cares about Native Americans and the communities and what the community is going through.
Yeah, it absolutely is essential to have Native American and Indigenous journalists, writers, and editors in newsrooms. And a lot of what you all were saying, it was resonating with me because the needle has moved slow. We've done measurements in our organization over the years, the percentage of Native American journalists who are in mainstream newsrooms and or on air, and the percentages in a single-digit number. And so we do see that bar is moving really slow, and it's taking a long time. But I do think there is some progress. But you're right, there's too many underreported stories that they're not getting the attention that they deserve. And it is because we're not seeing enough of us in those newsrooms. And I really liked hearing that, looking around at the table and seeing who's missing. And we can do that, when we're in our organizations and working with people, we can look around and we can think about this panel here today. And if there isn't a Native American journalist at that table, then I would expect that y'all would speak up and try to find a way and raise that issue. The same way I am, not every diverse group is recognized or represented here either, right? So there is absolutely that wide range, and there's got to be more done, Rebecca, absolutely. And my dad was a journalist, and I've been doing it for about 20 years. He did it maybe 40 or so years ago, and he worked for the company that I work for today. And the racism that he experienced back then, that's not being experienced by us today. So there's various measurements we can look at this.
But I think one of the things that we run into, and the National Association of Hispanic Journalists has run into it probably in the past 24 hours, is sometimes when we push back, even some of our own members push back, right? For example, Mrs. Biden, right? The First Lady, she had a taco comment the other day. NAHJ comes out with their statement because she stereotyped Latinos, right? And Nora, tell us about it. I mean, what I like about NAHJ and all these organizations is you have a powerful voice, but sometimes when we use it, I feel that not only does the public push back on us, but also members. So tell us, how are you dealing with that issue right now? I mean, I hate to put you on the spot, but it's a perfect example.
No, you're right. It is. Our members want us to be advocates for them and for Latinos. But that sometimes when we do take a stand, it makes people feel uncomfortable. In this situation, I think what some of our members are concerned about is that us coming out in opposition and calling out, and really, I know it's for speech writers, it's the people who write her speech, calling them out for really at the end of the day, just kind of being lazy in how they, try to compliment the Latino community with these, stereotypes. It was just kind of lazy and dumb. But it's being grabbed on by the conservative right. And so I think there's a concern that we are giving them credibility when we raise the issue. But I think it's also part of our mission, NAHJ, not just to further and promote Latinos in the newsroom, but also to, promote the fair treatment of Latinos in the media. And the media is, and I know we're all part of it, but we are often to blame or contribute to the problem of stereotypes, because everybody so easily goes to, the same sort of issues, and we cover the same tropes, and we cover the same, speaking heads. So, it's also incumbent on us to change that narrative and to come up with better ways to describe people and more accurately describe them than to fall back on, tired stereotypes, like they did about, tacos. And people have taken offense that we said, we're not tacos, and that she never said that. And it's like, okay, we get that. We get that, but it was still falling back on just these broad stereotypes in a way to try to connect with Latinos. And frankly, it's just pandering.
Exactly. And I'll say the SPJ Code of Ethics says avoid stereotypes, right? I mean, it's part of our ethics as journalists. And so it's sad that some members push back, and, we're here to represent journalism and, not to represent a political party. And I think I stand by NAHJ and what you did, Nora. I think it was an excellent point of view, in my opinion. Marie, your thoughts on this, because again, as a photojournalist, you know, and a lot of times we talk about reporters and producers and editors and photojournalists, you know, are you seeing that the diversity, because you also need diversity in photojournalists out there, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think in 15 years, I have seen some level of change. Has been very slow, and we're nowhere near where it should be. I think another aspect is how we represent people in our pages or in, you know, in television, radio, right? I think that that exercise of going through every single cover and analyzing how we're presenting communities of color was a very good exercise for us, right? You know, face the reality. This is what we're doing wrong.
Excuse me, back me up here. What exercise did you do? Did you examine all the photos you guys take and realize?
Yeah, so some time ago, we went through a chunk of front pages and we looked at the centerpiece and we started analyzing patterns, how we were presenting those communities, what was good, what was wrong, what needed to be changed. And I think that was a moment of like a wake-up call for the Chronicle. We created a DEI committee. That DEI at the Chronicle is very active. That has also helped. But I also think the problem is also with retention. How do you retain when you're also hiring underpaid, perhaps not providing the environment adequate for retention, things of that nature. It's part of my concerns. Like right now, in the last few weeks, I realized that now that we lost 2 photographers in the last couple of weeks, I am now the only Spanish speaker at the Chronicle as a photographer. Number one, I felt quite lonely. And number two, that is concerning. You know, we're supposed to reflect the community we are reporting at. And this is Houston, Texas. You know, if it's not the most diverse city in the nation, is maybe second, right? So a lot has changed, but there's a lot of other work that needs to be changed. And I think NPPA, I think the board is reflecting those values. There's a lot of people of color, my appointees. One is Southeast Asian, another one is a Cuban woman, and the third one is also an Asian American man. So, you know, one from a print tradition, the other one a multimedia, and another one from television. Those were my presidential appointees, trying to continue the efforts of, you know, of representing the membership.
Right.
But
and I think that is something you and I definitely have an obligation, and I have a responsibility as well as you, is to bring in more people of color. And I did the same thing with the committees. You know, some of them had no diversity at all. And when I came in, I revamped and I said, we need to be included at the table, whether it's ethics committee or whether it's a membership committee. By the way, I just want to let you know, I hope you don't mind if we go over maybe 15 minutes, ladies, just because, you know, this has been such a good conversation. And Nicole, do we have any questions from anybody? Because, you know, I mean, we're just going.
We do not have anything in the chat so far.
Right,
so just as a reminder to people, if you want to say something, please put it in the chat.
You want to ask us?
And something that I wanted to add, right, we cannot hire if we don't have a pool. Like, we need to work on our diversity pipelines. You know, I am the product of NAHJ student project, right? The Latino reporter. I am a product of Chips Queen from Freedom Forum, if I remember correctly. You know, and that is, you know, New York Times Journalism Institute. You know, those were efforts that back in the early 2000s paid off with me and with several of my colleagues. A lot, you know, some of them are at NABJ, you know, Jared, it's in Kathy's board. You know, they were the same. We were all in those diversity pipelines. Those things made a difference, at least back then.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I don't know if many of you know this, but I started Latinas in Journalism on Facebook. We have about 2,500 Latinas because I kept hearing from people saying, I can't find any who have experience. I was like, what the hell? I mean, come on. So now I'm like, okay, here's 2,500 people. Don't give me any more excuses. You know, because well, I went to NAHJ and, you know, I couldn't find any. I'm like, okay, that's, you know, I don't know. How many members do you have, Nora?
4,000. Just a little over 4,000.
You get tired of the excuses. So I think that's, you know, one of the things that I admire about all the organizations here is some of you are very vocal, I see you push back, and some of them are not as much. what kind of, I guess, what kind of stand do you take? And is it something that when you want to stand up for something, you have to run it by your whole board? I mean, because I only have a board of 9, so I can put out an email and they go, yeah, let's support this. What's it like when, you know, someone says, okay, Nora, we got to say something about the First Lady? How do you run through that? And are you more reluctant to you know, get out there and say, hey, stop treating us this way or stop ignoring us? I don't know. Michelle, you jump in on that one.
Yeah, I mean, for us, you know, AAJA has been, I think certainly in the past several years, we've just become more and more vocal and louder on a lot of issues. I think for a long time, there was a bit of a hesitation because, you know, we just tended not to be the loudest people pushing back publicly. I don't know if it's cultural, a lot of Asians just kind of being told to keep our heads down and be quiet and work. And a lot of people, like, you know, there's some cultural aspects to it, in that, you know, some people are raised to be, you know, respectful of elders and not really speak out. And those are really deep-seated values that many of us have had to unlearn, because our jobs require us to speak out and be vocal and push back and question authority. It's something that many of us have struggled with or you know, work through in our lives and in our career, including myself. And I think sometimes it has bled over into how AAJA has tended not to speak on something or try to see the other side or respect how that person may have come to that decision. But we decided it's time we need to be louder. We can't afford not to be. And so we started just issuing a lot more statements, and we just wanted to have a lot more to say. We hired a bigger comm staff so that they would speak faster and louder, and that we would just be ever present on social media. So we were very strategic and growing our voice, especially online in the past 2-3 years in the pandemic. Our members needed to feel seen and heard, and we wanted to show that we're there for them. So we really grew our voice that way, and we intend to do so. And internally, we've also done a lot of restructuring so that we don't hold up the process when we want to say something. It used to be that every single board member had to weigh in, there had to be a vote and everything, but we streamlined it so that we could just talk faster and be louder faster. And, you know, speaking of pushback internally, we've gotten some of that. I've gotten some people question to me, like, why has AAJA all of a sudden become so woke? You know, why is AAJA becoming so active and loud? We never agreed to this. And, you know, I've gotten some pushback on that, but probably for every one person who has pushed back on the way we're going, I've gotten 10, 15 more members messaging me to say, thank you, finally. I feel heard, I feel seen, and I feel like AAJA is speaking for me, and I completely support it. So I think gradually people are going to realize we're not the quiet Asians in the room not saying anything anymore. We're going to say something. We're going to speak up on behalf of and alongside everyone else who deserves to be speaking up. And we're going to bring other groups along with us. You know, we've been building relationships with the South Asian Journalists Association, with the Arab and Middle Eastern Journalists Association. Those who have not had a traditional seat at the table, we're bringing them into the fold. We've been working with the veteran journalist group, I keep forgetting their name, but they're the military veterans in journalism organization, because they also have not traditionally had a seat. They're fairly new, but they have a lot to say too. And we have always kind of been in that convening role for journalists and organizations anyway. So we plan on continuing. And like I said, I do, you know, for one person who's annoyed that AAJA has gotten woke, there are many, many others who have appreciated it. So, and our board supports it. This is a part of our growth plan, our strategic plan. So we continue on this path. And I do have to hop at the top of the hour because my workday is starting. And so.
Oh yeah, it's 8:30 in the morning or 9 o'clock, right? Well, I totally understand. And you know what? I appreciate that what you're saying is don't stick us to that stereotype of being quiet with our head down. We're talking, we're going to be in your face if we're going to change things, especially when it concerns, you know, your community, which I think is beautiful, and it's good to hear. And I know you're going to have to jump off, so you know when you leave, we'll say goodbye.
Rebecca.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Do you mind? I wanted to address a chat question. Somebody talked about high school newspapers and in high schools, and as somebody as somebody who, do you think investment in student newspapers in high schools across the country could help developing journalists of color from a young age? Does the lack of student newspaper impact whether young people of color even consider a career in journalism? Yes, I think so. I am a product of my high school newspaper. I have been meeting a deadline since I was a sophomore in high school. I was active with my high school newspaper. I was active with my college newspaper. Even though I didn't go to a fancy, journalism school, I went to the college that was available to me in my hometown, Pan American University, now UT Pan Am. And that helped me, that I had that ability to be able to go here without having to worry about room and board and how am I going to survive. And so one of the things that I wanted to get at, though, was that I think we need to change up a little bit the way we grow our own, or we grow that pipeline. I think there's too much dependency on those journalism schools that are really not affordable to many journalists of color, and internships, which I as a someone who was the first in my family to graduate from college, I didn't have anybody who could guide me and explain to me, the importance of those internships. And it seemed like a foreign thing to me to take off somewhere for 2 months and leave my family and go work in a strange city. And how was I going to support myself? And it just seemed like overwhelming. And so it felt like somebody needed to explain that to me a little bit better. So one of the things that I did about 6 years ago when I became Metro editor at the paper was, instead of, relying on trying to find talent through our traditional summer internships, I started looking around to the, San Antonio College, which had a great student newspaper and great journalism program, and Texas State University, where I also had contact. And I started saying, hey, do you have some kids that you think, are talented and are worth, nurturing? And then I got permission to hire them as weekend reporters. So they would come in and work the cop shift or a GA shift on a Saturday or Sunday. And I just grew a stable of young journalists, and at least 4 or 5 of them went on to be hired by us after they were they graduated. And so we got to see early on, and it wasn't this big scary thing where they had to give up for 2 months, go somewhere where they didn't know and try to, prove themselves. This was, they could live at home. They were there. They just had to come in for a weekend 8-hour shift. And it was wonderful. We gave it up right about 2019 because of some budget cuts, and I was told we'll get it back. Then the pandemic hit, and it was like, well, you can't help somebody if they're working from home. So I'm really, really hoping that very soon we'll start doing that again. So I always encourage folks who say we don't know where to go. It's like, look at your local, higher education universities, and find out, is there young talent that you can help grow, and give them a Saturday gig, for 6 months.
I think something also, Nora, that's a great idea. I mean, that everybody should take. I think another thing that we did at the SPJ Fort Worth chapter is made it a point to go visit a high school, just as a speaker, just to show up and go, hi, yeah, I'm part of this organization. Even today, I will go to local high schools in Dallas and say hi, I'll visit their newspaper, I'll tell them what I do. They're all excited, because you're going to touch someone. I mean, someone is going to go, oh gosh, I remember meeting Rebecca Aguilar. Maybe I didn't know what she did, but she was a reporter. And it doesn't even have to be organized, right? If we told our members, can you go visit a high school, especially people of color, go find those high schools where, there's a lot of diversity, right? Or some that are just one group, go in there and talk to them, how important it is to take a journalism class. And at the same time, talk to the principal. Before you get rid of this class, go get rid of this class, not the journalism class, because journalism will teach them how to write an essay for their college and entries, right? Their applications. I think that's important. So does anybody else have kind of like a high school, program? Yeah, Kathy, go ahead.
So I would say here in Chicago, our chapter, we're heavily involved, and we serve as like mentors to the college student chapters throughout the state, but also to some of the high schools as well. And we become mentors to them. We bring them in for like job training and workshops. But also the other thing is that throughout NABJ, there are several chapters who host like a journalism, high school journalism workshop or institute, or like a Saturday Academy. I know our New York chapter has something like that. Chicago has something like that. Kansas City, there are a few other chapters, but they are specifically for, you know, high school students and the journalists. So there are actual programs where they're producing content, you know, over a certain period of time. And yeah, I was gonna say AAJA has J Camp.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, J Shop for NABJ, where it's that week-long training program. So I think that, you know, on the local level, some of these chapters can do things like that to help the students get involved, and then it graduates. And actually that's also a pipeline to, you know, leadership within an organization and getting more active and things like that. It's like, you know, you're helping them along, you're bringing them along. Like Michelle was saying, she's part of it since 18, you know, this is how it starts.
Yeah, definitely. And what I think too is, for example, we have regions, right? SPJ Region 1 this weekend is going to have a high school program. It's going to be at a college. I think there's like 20 high school students that applied for it. It's all paid for. It's a very diverse group. I mean, it just takes one person sometimes in the organization, like our Region 1 coordinator, Chris Vaquero, and, you know, putting together with the chapter presidents and leader, it's going to be great. One person, one idea for the high schools. I think that's important. Michelle, goodbye.
Bye.
Stay another few minutes because we do have a few questions. Have a good day at work.
Thank you.
Here's one. Looking into the future, what do you think are the challenges for journalism, especially with polls showing there is dismal trust in the media? Thoughts, Marie?
Oh, whoa. I mean, I think NPPA, I think that we're all in the same boat. How do we stay relevant with a model that is changing? Financial model, newspapers, television stations cutting funding. I think that has been, I think part of your questions were what has been the biggest challenge. I think that is it. Moving with the times, understanding that things are never going to be the same. I think that we try to sell the message of the code of ethics as photojournalists, so we can try to rebuild some level of trust in what people are seeing in their televisions and opening in their newspapers and online, right? I mean, this concept of mistrust, we need to address that. We need to, you know, literacy in the world of journalism is important. I don't think communities always understand what we do. Even something as simple as a separation or the difference between an editorial board and a newsroom. You know, even something as simple as that, we find that people are not always aware of those things. So it's we have a team constantly, right? The advocacy, I believe that NPPA's strength is their advocacy. We have 2 lawyers who are, you know, sending statements and amicus briefs and all of this kind of stuff, suing,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, protection.
To defend the right.
Right. Francine, your thoughts? I mean, because again, the indigenous community, Native American community sometimes hasn't, you know, not been highlighted, profiled, their stories have not been told. I'm sure that trusting the media has to be very difficult. How do you break down those barriers to show your community or any communities, the public, you know, trust me with your story. I will put it out there so people will be educated and know. How do we start with that? What do we do?
You know, I think that a lot of that education is part of every story gathering, where you do need to explain to that person who's doing their first interview, you know, this is how it's going to go. And for us and our community, it has been, you know, we didn't have a voice, and now you have a journalist who's willing to take your message from your community to a politician and to bring those answers to the people. And I think what we really learned through this pandemic, especially for Indigenous news gathering, is that we are essential and our news is essential, and the fact that we need to be able to deliver it, that has been essential. And so I think that the teaching part is probably what we need to start maybe amplifying more, so that the distrust could be broken down a little bit. But really and truly, I think most people, they've been grateful for their story to be told, and they just want to be able to see that it's told right and correct.
Yeah. Here's another question from Sarah. As women, and especially being women of color, did you ever feel any pushback to your running for position in your organization? If so, how did you overcome it? And where did the pushback come from? I'll start with that one. Yeah, I had pushback from the beginning when I became running for Secretary Treasurer. There was a group at SPJ that they just didn't want me to become, move up the food chain, including they didn't want the Yvette Davila Richards to move up the food chain. She's currently the Secretary Treasurer. They made an effort using Facebook pages, you name it, to stop us. Again, it was a small group. And again, I tell you, I have so much respect for our members, because they were basically saying, you're not going to tell us how to vote. You're not going to tell us who we should believe in. And again, an organization that's probably at least 90% white said, these women have, you know, they have the experience. They have the leadership experience. We trust them. And so I will always be grateful to SPJ members, because, you know, we'll always have haters and naysayers and people, critics, and you name it, they're always going to be out there. But what they don't realize sometimes, and I'm saying this to Sarah, who asked this question, is sometimes you take that negative fuel and make it, you go forward. You know, you push forward. You make them realize you can try to stop me, but look at me now, right? And that's the beauty of, especially, you know, I also grew up with parents who were civil rights leaders, migrant rights leaders, you know, migrant advocates, and they always taught me, and civil rights leaders, and they always taught me, you know what, there's always going to be haters out there for your skin color, for because you're the daughter of undocumented workers, you name it, but only you can stop yourself. And so when this group, I'll probably write a book sometime and name them all in there. When this group try to stop me, you know, I have my people, like all you women, who say, keep moving forward. Rebecca, keep doing your thing. Great members, I have a great board. What you do is you surround yourself with what I call the posse of protection. They're always there for you during good times and bad times. And that's why I'm a success today, because I have a great organization that believes that we should all be at the table all the time, no matter what age, no matter whether you're LGBTQ, whether you're disabled, whatever. And again, I tell you all out there, if you're a hater, a naysayer, a critic, you need to go somewhere else, because we don't have time for your negative energy. That's my say. Nora, what about you?
I'm gonna go ahead and answer the question here that someone asked me about recruiting students for unpaid internships. You know, that is exactly part of the problem that I was talking about earlier, especially for young journalists of color. They can't afford to take an unpaid internship. So that is something that companies need to change. And I'm proud that at Hearst, we stopped doing that, I want to say about a decade ago. And it meant we had to reduce the number of interns that we got, but it was the right thing to do, to pay these young students for their time and for their work. So I was very happy that Hearst did that. And I think that's something that maybe we as organizations need to be pressing for all corporations to do that and stop doing unpaid internships. And that's also maybe something that as organizations, you know, we do a lot to raise money for scholarships, but maybe we also need to be raising money that will allow a student to take an unpaid internship by helping to provide them with, you know, room and boarding and so forth. Things like that can help them to take those internships, because they need those clips. They need to show something to the prospective employer that they have some experience. So that's why internships are so, so important. And it's why we really need to help our students. It's not enough just to help them get to school and help them get their degree. We also have to try to prepare them and give them all the possible tools available with real experience through internships.
Good, good. Kathy, to you on whether you want to talk about internships or having any pushback as a leader, tell us about.
No, I agree with Nora, is that, you know, the unpaid internships, when I was in school, those are the ones that I needed, but I couldn't take them because they were unpaid. You know, I had already started working retail in college because I just was used to making money. And that's actually how I ended up starting in business journalism, is because those internships paid. You know, and I had no interest in business journalism, but I developed one quickly because the internships were paying and they saw the value, you know, and I see the kids now, and also to Nora's point is that, you know, we do need to start thinking about scholarships, not just for, you know, keeping you in school, but for those unpaid internships. You know, you do need housing, you do need some money to float you over until you get that first check, which may not arrive until about maybe 3 weeks after you first start. Maybe you do need to travel and maybe you need a plane ticket. So we do need to start thinking about those type of scholarships as well for students who have to take unpaid internships, because I mean, of course, we all want credit for it, but sometimes you think about it, you're paying for that internship class, which means, okay, you get the credit, but you're still paying for it. And on top of that, we've got to not pay you for your internship. It's kind of crazy. So I'm with Nora. You got me, girl.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to start wrapping this up. I'm going to go around to all of you. Remember, there are people right now that want to eventually probably have our positions. And they're thinking, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I should do it. I don't know if I have time to do it. There's a lot of elections coming up soon. Your last words of wisdom to especially women of color out there, but all women, all journalists. I think anybody, if I can do it, they can do it too. I've always said that. If I can do it, they can do it too. Your words of wisdom to anybody out there who, because remember, we're volunteers. We don't get paid to do this. I mean, right? I mean, we don't get paid to do this. And so you really have to give it time, quality time. You can't just show up part-time. You have to show up all the time. I mean, as president of SPJ, I'm going to tell you, if you want to be president, you need to be able to do this 24/7. I've had to turn away freelance work, and a lot has happened in Texas because this is a 24/7 job. So that I will tell all my peeps out there. Marie, your advice, your inspiration, your encouragement.
My encouragement is reach out, get in touch with me. I am you know, my policy is it's openness, it's making myself available, accessible, equal in many ways. Be bold. This is not only about, you've got to be bold, you've got to reach out, right? I mean, we're seeing changes, but if they don't, you know, I don't know that they are out there. So what I am asking anyone that it's seeing, you're interested in careers in photojournalism, you're interested in joining the board, you're interested in volunteering, in serving because you have something to offer, because you're truly interested, please reach out. You know, we can definitely find a place for you.
Thank you. Francine, what about you? I know that your term ends when?
My term as president will end at our conference in August in Phoenix, and whether or not the board wants to nominate me and elect me as president again will have to be seen. And you know what, I do look forward to being able to mentor someone, or someone just wants to jump right into it, but there will be a time where someone will have to fill my seat. My board seat will officially end in a couple of years. But what I would advise young people, any people of any age, quite honestly, if they wanted to join a board or get into leadership, it's any time is fine in your career, but go after all the opportunities, go after all of the training. The training never stops. And look for leadership training. That was one of the things that I was able to tick off my box, was the Pointer leadership training, and that's where I met the previous president. So that's my advice, is to do all the things, and also talk to people. We have so many wonderful people in our industry who like to talk, and there are so many mentorship opportunities among all the journalism organizations. Lots are available for free to people, but you really have to want to do it. You have to latch on to that reason, the spark, the thing that makes you want to do it, and always remind yourself of that. And you know, for me, that's wanting to see a journalist who, like myself, I had my education in high school. I didn't go to college or university. I didn't go to J school. Right out of high school, started my career. So I want to see someone come right out of high school and do journalism and be a producer just like me. So I am looking for a protege, and my DMs are open. I'm open to training and mentoring someone.
That's wonderful. Kathy.
I would echo Marie and Francine, where it's just like, please reach out to former and current board members and pick their brain, you know. And like Nora said, you have to have the time, like you said, Rebecca, have the time, because this is like a full-time and a half job, free, on top of my day job that pays my bills. So it's just like, you have to really be passionate about this and want to do it and serve the membership and devote that time on top of your job, because it's truly a commitment. You have to be all in, or just don't do it at all.
Right, don't do it at all if you can't do it. You're right. Nora?
Well, one piece of advice is, you know, get your employer's support. Because you're going to need it, because you are going to be spending some time, sometime during work hours, doing the business of the organization. So be sure you have the support of your employer. I don't think it's necessary, but it's very helpful. You know, don't let that discourage you from running if you really have the passion and the commitment. But it is very helpful to have your employer's backing. And, you know, right now we're still riding that wave of trying to be more diverse. So I think right now employers are much more willing to support these type of issues. And Hearst has really been fantastic. I don't know if that's been your experience, Marie, but they've been super, super supportive. Marie's a fellow Hearstie, but they've been very, very supportive, and have really, you know, touted my presidency as a point of pride. So I'm thankful to Hearst for that.
I will leave you with this. Make sure the focus is the members. It's all about the members. It's not about you and your resume. It's all about the members. Also have time and be unafraid to push back, sometimes on members and sometimes the public out there that, yes, doesn't trust us, feels that sometimes we're not doing our jobs, that criticize us constantly. So remember, it's about the members, and reach out to other leaders. All the leaders here, I've pretty much reached out to all of them. Sometimes it's just, I need a pep talk, or they need a pep talk. I mean, Nora and I have had some long talks, definitely. So that's important. And remember, you're never alone. You're never alone. Never feel that way. Of course, you know where you can find me. I'm always on Twitter or something. So everybody have a little drink so we can have a little toast. Understand? Let's see. I want to toast all these women. Kathy, grab something. Kathy, come on. Oh my gosh. All right, just hold your hand up. I want to toast all of you. Some of you will be leaving office. I will be leaving office soon. But thank you. Thank you for being strong leaders. Thank you for having the courage to take on this responsibility. Thank you for caring about journalism, women of color, and all the communities out there that really need us to shine a light on them. And remember, there is no such thing as voice for the voiceless. The voices have always been there. Let's stop ignoring them and show everybody that we should always be included. A toast to all of you.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, toasting.
All right, you guys, I will let you go. Thank you again to the SPJ New England chapter. Thank you, Nicole, for running this Zoom for us. I want to say thank you to all of you, and please share the link once we get this recording out there, because there are people working tonight and they couldn't be here. Until next time, have a great day, everybody. Bye. Thank you, you guys.
Thank you.